Hey everybody, welcome back to We Are the Batman. I'm Mike.
And this is Matthew.
All right, so as you guys know, we missed last week's episode of the Penguin. I was on vacay, and in all of our planning for me to be gone, we didn't plan around the Penguin because Matt called me at one point, was like, hey,
how are we doing this?
How are we doing this? And I was like, how are we doing what? And he goes, reviewing the Penguin. And there was a pause, and I just went, oh yeah. So real quick, just quick gloss over just episode 5 was kind of the reset the board after episode 4. The like, oh yeah, I remember how like the last episode was like mostly flashback. Okay, here's where everybody's at, here's where we're at, and go was episode 5. Matt, just kind of general thoughts on episode 5 up to where they find the subway car at the end.
Sure.
Just episode 5.
Episode 5 was probably my least favorite episode. And I kind of felt like, and I think I told you this last week, was like, okay, like this, not filler, but it was like, all right, so the next episode, we're going to get going because this episode, like you said, you're like, that's a reset. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll give it that reset thing as long as the next episode, we're getting back to things. And I think that was where I was with it. Again, I didn't think it was like terrible. I was just like, yeah, okay, let's get back on track. And that's kind of where I left episode 5. Like,
well, and no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just like, again, the acting is always outstanding. Chick playing Sophia, whose name I will never remember.
Milioti. I know we're so bad at names. God, we are not the name people.
if only there was.
If it's a comic book name, we'll remember it.
Yeah.
We're not going to remember. Don't count on us for actor names.
A device we could have all of this information up.
No, I know. It's not like either of us has a computer in front of us or anything. It's not like I have the Wikipedia up in front of me. Although I do know her name is Krista Milioti, but I've had a stupid crush on her since The Sopranos. So.
Okay. So yeah, performance-wise, everything's cool. I just was like, all right, cool. Let's get back on it. And then how about you? What did you think of 5?
So 5, I won't say it was my, again, I hate to use the term least favorite. It was just simply I've liked everything.
Yeah.
It's just, if I had to put one at the bottom, it would be episode 5, only because it was the reset. It was because episode 5 had to kind of do a lot of what episode 1 did, which is like, okay, now let's pick back up with where we were.
Yeah.
Especially because it's been by the time 5 came out, it had been 2 weeks since we'd spent any time with Oz and Vic. Because the last thing we saw of them was at the end of episode 3. Now, granted, that was all their episode. And then we had another absolute bangerang episode with the episode all about Sophia. So episode 5 for me was honestly, it was kind of a palate cleanser. It was a refresher of like, okay, guys, let's this is us resetting the board. This is round 2. Let's start setting up for the rest of the season. So I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite, but also that's when you have episodes 3 and 4 the way as good as they were. That's the problem of The Dark Knight Rises coming after Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. It's like, okay. But one thing we did talk about, and again is worth mentioning, we mentioned this in our Comic-Con 1 week later recap, which we just put up yesterday. Go check that out. Which is that now we don't have the numbers for this week's episode yet, but we do know that viewership has increased for every episode up through the first 5 anyway, which is not something that usually happens. And you pointed out that is all word of mouth, baby.
That's word of mouth. Everybody's talking about it. They're enjoying it. So that's a good thing. I mean, you don't make a show so nobody sees it.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get into the main reason we're here today, which is for episode 6, the episode that dropped yesterday, episode Gold Summit. Let's go ahead and get right into, again, by the way, guys, spoilers, just general spoilers.
It says review, but if you don't know,
come on. I mean, I know some people do spoiler free. No, you don't come here for the spoiler free. You wanted the spoiler free review. I liked it. Matt?
No.
Yeah, this is going to be a weird one, guys. This is going to be the episodes like this. Videos like this are why you come to the channel. Trust me. So we're gonna get through mine real quick because I feel like Matt's feelings are gonna spark up way more of a conversation than anything I have to say, which is just to say, again, not my favorite of the season. I still genuinely liked it, and I think this episode is the one where, and we'll get into this more, I think, when we start bringing up your points, is I think this is the episode where they are now starting to remind us, hey guys, this is still the bridge for the Batman Part 2. And so what I feel like what is now being set up against what I originally thought. I don't think there's so much setting up for a finale of this show. I think in the excitement of everything, I also kind of forgot this is meant to be a bridge to the next Batman movie. So it could very well be that some of the things I'm expecting to get tied up this season might very well not get tied up. And that's the thought process I'm having around this episode, which is, okay, I need to see the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Because I truly don't know where we're going now. This episode kind of subverted my expectations in a lot of ways, that like, oh, this is not the direction I saw things going in. I thought Squid was going to be a much bigger problem for a longer time, at least in the back. This is not the, but again, it was that in that moment of like, oh yeah, this is like essentially a prequel to the Batman Part 2. Huh. So that's where I'm sitting right now as where we're at with the show. I am still a massive fan. I think this is the best show currently like airing right now. But as far as just overall, it's like, okay, I need to see how this show ends. I think because we are so close to the end, it's like,
yeah.
Okay, I think I'm at the point now where I'm ready to just see the end and see see what this is meant to be. So those are my thoughts. Matt, your thoughts are different, and I have a feeling we're going to discuss them. Thank you in advance to everybody for the engagement down in the comments that you're about to give us, because I can already feel it coming. And while you're down there, you might as well please go ahead, because
Subscribe.
Because this is we normally don't agree this much. We've been agreeing a lot lately, and we don't normally agree this much. So let's
start the disagreement.
Let's get into the part of the stuff we usually do. It's normally reserved for the podcast, where I tell you how insane you are.
Yeah. This is the point that if this was not a Penguin show and this was not a show we were reviewing on this podcast, I probably would be done. Like I'm like, it ended with the okay. Like now I'm interested to see what happens, because obviously, so Sophia has found them. So I'm like, all right, how is this going to happen? But this is where I don't know if it's my writer brain or just cliches or whatever, but it's like, oh yeah, this is why the mom's in this show, so that she can be kidnapped and either killed or made to be used against the Penguin. Cool. And then also like the way, what was that guy's name? Squid, yeah. Squid. Like, unless you kind of turned me around, because the thing you said is like,
I said this on the phone earlier, by the way. We had a conversation. Earlier. We normally try not to do this too much, but this was a conversation that needed to be had prior to recording.
Yes.
Or else I was going to reach through the camera and smack him in the face. So he needed to talk me down before we hit record. So we had a little bit of a prior conversation that Matt's going to allude to, but
yes,
please go on.
Yeah. So you basically said like the whole Squid thing seems meaningless, but the show's not over yet. So there may be something that this leads to, which I'm hoping is the case, because so far this entire show, nothing has been left dangling. I'm at the point now where I feel like unless something awesome happens with the Squid storyline, we didn't need any of that in this show. Well, I dare say like every bit of information we got in the last 2 episodes could have been won if we trimmed away some fat.
I won't disagree with you on like, yes, they're probably, much like we said, but about the Batman, the movie, is like, yeah, there probably is a 2.5 hour version of this movie, but you'd have to go and rewrite some stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's one of those like, and again, without knowing how it plays into the grand scheme of things, you know, but it's something I thought of. So to your point, to kind of restate what Matt is saying, my general process is I hate when, not I hate, but a kind of a peeve of mine is when people refer to an episode of a show as filler when we don't know how it ends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's only filler if it doesn't have any real bearing on the outcome of the story. So until we know what the outcome of the story is, we don't know it's filler. Yeah. But I also say I argue against it even being filler because of what of the devices it allowed for Squid allowed for us to have. One of the things I mentioned is that it gives, because you had mentioned this last week. Again, we didn't do our review of last week, but you had mentioned like, I hope that the Squid thing doesn't become like a persistent problem, because who cares?
Well, and I was like, part of me, as much as I said that, sorry not to interrupt, too bad. No, you're good. I was like, but what would if they keep? I thought it was gonna be Squid and his boys were gonna attack the apartment, and Pegwood and Vic were gonna have to fight them.
Oh,
I'd have preferred that to let me just gunshot this dude to be done with it all.
I thought before we get into the rest of it, here's what I thought Vic was gonna do was say, yeah, man, I'll cut you in on dealing some of this bliss, because Squid's an idiot, and he's like, hey, Squid, go deal over here where Sophia and Sal's people are hanging out, so that they can go whack Squid and make him no longer their problem. That's what I thought they were going to do.
That'd have been cool.
But that would have been cool. But here's why here's more on why, like, how the Squid thing worked for me. One is it's a it allows for just honestly a really excellent character moment between Vic and Oz, when a couple of them actually. One, when Vic goes to Oz and Oz is struggling with the conversation he had with his mom, which we'll get into when we get into more of the episode. But and Oz is trying to fix the generator because he's just like, he's trying not to think about the talk he just had with his mom. And we've all done that, where it's like, I just had a rough conversation I don't want to think about. What's a meaningless task a menial task I can delve into? And then Oz snaps out of it and says, do we got a problem? And I think Vic realizes in that moment, no, this is my chance to step up and handle my own shit. I'm going to go deal with this myself. And then later on, when we have that second moment with Oz, when Oz is like, hey, we realize that Oz was listening. Even though Oz was in his own little world, he wasn't ignoring Vic. He was being a dad in that moment, just having a dad moment. And he looks at Vic and he says, hey, do we actually have a problem with this thing? And Vic is like, Vic, are you okay? Because you can see tears in his eyes. Because shooting and killing somebody in that way, I mean, in any way, can't feel good, but like Squid suffered. Like Squid very clearly suffered. And you can see that took a lot out of Vic. And Oz has a moment where briefly the walls come down.
Yeah. And
he says, hey, like, you are in no shape to be on the job tonight. In that moment, Oz, as well as other moments throughout the episode, Oz showed the kind of benevolent gangster mobster he wants to be.
Yeah.
And which is like, hey, you're in no shape for this. Ditch your clothes, get rid of all, so that way there's nothing on you. Go home, rest it off.
Yeah.
Which then puts him in this position to be there with Oz's mom when Sophia gets there, because she doesn't know. That could just be any old lady living in what is the neighborhood called? Crown Point. But because that's Vic, who she knows is Oz's driver, now she knows that's Oz's mom. So I would argue that everything to do with Squid was able to put us in again, give us some great character exploration moments with Oz and Vic, but also it puts Vic in the exact situation where also, again, he's got those blood on his shoes we saw, and you can't just wipe blood off. And he didn't finish because the power came back on.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of things left to come back from this. I don't think this is done yet. And again, I think this is all the more of like that reminder of, yeah, I think this is the part of the show where we're getting into setting up for the Batman Part 2. Because much like we've predicted or considered, we've said several times on this show, as we've talked about the Batman Part 2, there's a good chance that like the overall villains of the Batman Part 2 could just be crime, could just be the crime bosses. We said in like episode 2 or 3 review of this, like everyone we're seeing in this show could very well be the rest of the cast of the Batman saga for Matt Reeves. That's so possible. So I think that's where I'm like, I need to see where it's like I'm pushing back so hard on any of this being unnecessary until we see the end.
And like I said, we'll have to see if it means something. Cool. If not, it's fine. Like I said, it's not like I think we were saying earlier. Like part of it is this show is not my thing. It's just not. This is not my. I would, if it wasn't called The Penguin, I would not watch the show. If it wasn't linked to the Batman series of films, I wouldn't watch it. I don't watch crime movies. Or crime, like Goodfellas, very well acted. I don't ever need to see that movie again. Just didn't do anything for me. So I think that's where this is, that whole thing of, I don't think it sucks. I'm not like, man, this is horrible. It's just not. This is not my cup of tea. Like if Batman showed up in this episode, I'd be down. That's also like the weird time jump thing of like, okay, so we're going to say a week has passed.
So they're never
longer.
They're never super clear on how much time has passed. Matt Reeves has said that the show, and I think as we get back into like the rest of the show here, Matt Reeves has said that the show takes place over, I believe, several months, because it starts, the week of the right after the movie, hours after the movie. So the week of the election. So we are at this point well into November, if not into December.
Well, because look,
they start off with the snow and all that. So I think that's meant to be an indicator of like winter is here. Like, sorry, Game of Thrones, winter ain't coming. It's here. You know what I mean?
Well, to say that he only had 2 barrels of those mushrooms, and now he's got a full empire based on those mushrooms.
Yeah,
that's not a week, or there's some time.
But also, they are in like a thriving, environment for them. So, but yeah, it just said, all it says on the Wikipedia is sometime later.
Yes.
So, and it's been long enough that like, Sophia and her therapist have a established routine. Let's call it that.
And Sal is no longer dealing with being stabbed in the stomach.
No, he's over that. And is living in Sophia's home, apparently.
Cooking her meals. But I think this is also that part where like I'm like, a new drug has hit the scene, and it's taking this city by storm.
Right.
Where's Batman?
Again, and we've talked first of all, we know Matt Reeves has said you're not going to see him in the show. He's not.
I know we're not.
But I think and we've mentioned this before, and I think this goes back to something we said before, which is like the phrase "you're not going to see Batman in this," I think means 2 things. 1, we are physically not going to see him, and 2, or B, for those keeping track, just because we're not seeing him doesn't mean he's not there. You know what I mean? Like this is we could very well see in the beginning of the Batman Part 2 a click here to skip intro, but recap of Batman's perspective of everything that's happened over X amount of weeks, i.e. the events of the Penguin. You know what I mean? So just because again, like we said a couple episodes ago, Batman got into the Iceberg Lounge 3 times, and Penguin is only aware of 2 of them.
Yeah. Well, and even if it was one of these, like one of the guys comes back.
Yeah.
And he's like, bro, Sam and Jeff are gone. Batman got him. That's why I'm back so quickly. You're like, what do you mean Batman got him? Did he follow you? No, he was too busy. But like, we
Well,
got to be more careful. Like
but I also
minuscule idea, because I
sorry.
mean, the first couple episodes, it seems like day. So like, okay,
Right.
under a week, this thing's happening fast. I can accept Batman has not come onto this situation
Right.
with all the other crime in the city. You get past 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm like, there's no way you introduce a new drug that's hitting so much that Batman isn't somehow aware. And like, I don't need to see him in the show.
Well, it
but
also could
mention.
be, yeah, it also could be that right now he's, and I totally get where you're coming from. I want to be clear. Like, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. This is more me trying to play devil's advocate than anything else. I think within the reality of this world we're living in with this Batman,
Yeah.
Especially because we're only starting to see like news of the drug hit the headlines and stuff in this episode. And a lot, if you remember back from the Batman, a lot of he doesn't exactly have insider information yet.
Yeah.
Like, he relies mostly on what's in the news and what Gordon tells him. So, I mean, it could very well be he doesn't know yet. Again, this is still only a couple months. When you think about how rudimentary Batman was at the end of the movie, this is only 8 weeks later. And so I just, if this was any other Batman, I'd be a bit more concerned. I think just because of the realities of this Batman that Matt Reeves established for us, I'm not as surprised that we're not hearing about him being more involved, because it just doesn't seem like something that would. And I think that's the part of it that has me going, okay, now we're setting up for the Batman part 2, is like, now the drug is gaining traction. Now it's getting out on the streets. He just gave all of Gotham a free dose at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And got the power back on in Crown Point. So that's the part that I think is like, you want to start hearing mentions of the Batman and like how, like, what his involvement's going to be. That's what I think the rest of the show, that's the part where I'm saying is this is where it starts setting up for the Batman part 2.
Let's hope so.
So that's where I'm like, end of the show, I think, is where we're gonna know for sure what we're getting out of it. I just think, I think the problem, not the problem, but I think where you're at is you're having a little hard time seeing the forest for the trees with this one, maybe.
Well, and like I said, I don't need him to show up, but even if you did that, like, hey,
right,
Batman peg so-and-so.
That's what I'm saying. We might not get that till the end, though, because it's probably only just now getting on his radar.
Yeah,
is what I'm saying. So that's why I'm saying, like, if you want that, you might not get that till the end, because that's probably going to be the setup for the Batman part 2. This could be part of the Batman part 2 for all, because the drops were part of the Batman.
Yeah, they were already established.
Yeah, they were already established, and the Batman had an A and a B plot. It had the Riddler plot and the gang and drug plot. So this could just be setting up the gang and drug plot for the Batman part 2. And then we find out whoever the hell the big comic book villain's going to be.
Yeah.
I would say Clayface, but now it seems like we might be getting him in Creature Commando. So who the hell knows? Anyway,
we'll see. But no,
I want to move into a couple of just really specific scenes, though. We mentioned the ones with Oz and Vic. I really want to talk about, though, the scene with Oz and his mom when he gets her out of the tub.
Sure.
Like, that's one of those scenes that's like that. I almost texted you again, and then after they have this just horrible conversation, this horrible moment, he just dolls her up and lets her have a moment in the mirror with her music playing or whatever. And that was the moment where I almost texted you, and I was like, again, I'm glad I didn't know, knowing how you feel, but it's like, God, this show is just like daring the Emmys not to give them one. Like it's like they're looking at them like, yeah, go ahead. Don't nominate us. See what happens. What happens. Go ahead. Do it. Do it.
And I'll say, like, outside of my feelings of the story,
Mhm.
I cannot say that the acting here is not stellar across the board.
Mhm.
Everybody here is doing a bang up job. Give that all the awards.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, I mean, Colin Farrell by himself should get an award for this show.
Well, and Deirdre O'Connell's performance as his mom cannot be understated.
Yeah.
She has been so chilling in ways I can't describe. I mean, it's unreal. You can, in that scene with the two of them, like, every guy who loves his mom was Oz Cobb. The idea of just like having that conversation about not like, hey, would you put me out of my misery, but like what to do, like the DNR conversation, or like, you know, like the vegetative state, like one of those end of life conversations. It's a conversation you never want to have, you know? And this is a guy who has done everything for his mom.
Yeah.
Vic even says that at the end. He's like, he got the power back for you. He did this for you.
Yeah.
He was tired of seeing his mom. He went and tortured the shit out of that councilman. Yeah. Because his mom was cold.
Yeah.
And he was tired of it. He was tired of his mom suffering. And again, that was that glimpse into like the kind of person Penguin wants to be. It's like, I will fuck you up if it means getting the power back on for my neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oof.
Yeah. No, I thought it was, that's cool.
Jesus Christ, it's like talking to a wall. All right. Well, listen, we would love to know what you guys think of Matt's opinions down in the comments below. Thank you again for the engagement. While you're on your way down there, remember, you have to pass by the subscribe button to click the comment. So you might as well. It's on the way. It's just good efficiency.
Nope.
It's good efficiency.
Subscribe.
Make sure you guys also follow us on all social media at WATB Pod, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. You can find me on social media at Mr. Mike Shea.
You can find me on Twitter at Mr. J Ninja.
And we will see you guys again next time. Same bad time, same bad podcast channel.
Bye-bye.